one of the things that I really love that Joe said to me that kind of struck with me is to figure out what your strengths are and build on those instead of like looking at your weaknesses. And this is where I say you should just hire the people to take care of all your weaknesses and continue to grow your strengths. And so, Joe, what I'd love for you to talk about today. So, by the way, anyone who wants to take one of these tests, you should just Google BOSI, BOSI.com, and then the test is out there for free in his TED Talk. But you take the test and you could read through it. But I'd really like for you, Joe, to explain what does the B and the O and the S and the I really represent, and if you could give us one example of what are the specific positions that would fall into those categories of each of these letters?
Yeah. So let's say you're sitting here and you're thinking to yourself, I really need a partner who's going to, or a key employee who's going to help me either scale the business or bring in new business or handle development. It really comes down to not just what their resume says and their background says, but also their pre-wiring. So anybody who shows up in our assessment process in what we call the builder quadrant, these are people who are pre-wired to scale businesses very, very quickly. So when I was studying entrepreneurs, we found that only about 13% of all entrepreneurs have this wiring, which is why a very small percentage of companies grow to 20, 30, 50, 100 million, 200 million and beyond. It's not about skill, it's about how you're wired, how you think, and how you make decisions. So this same wiring that's inside the entrepreneur, inside you and me, is also in your people, in the people you're going to hire, in the team you're going to build. So the question is, how are they wired? So anyone who shows up in that B category is going to be pre-wired to help you scale the business, take leadership roles, have huge P&L responsibility, really drive a lot of growth in the business and expansion. Anyone who shows up in the O quadrant is pre-wired to sell, to be a rainmaker. Anyone who shows up in the S quadrant is more going to be designed for the day-to-day operations, service, excellent client service. And then anyone who shows up in the I quadrant is pre-wired for innovation, to build game-changing product. So if we're looking, Joanna, if we're looking for someone as a developer, you and I have two choices. We can find a developer with S DNA, in which case they'll do a very decent job at taking the scope that I write up and write code around it, or I can look for a developer with iDNA who's going to build mind-numbing stuff that no one's ever thought of. There's a big difference between S developers and I developers, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what would you say in terms of when you're hiring people, when they take this test, if you have operations manager, CIO of a company, can you talk a little bit about what type of, what the combinations are? Because I think that no one really falls into the category of one of these, right?
Yeah, so we're all a combination of a couple of these at least. And if some of you want to just throw out roles you're looking to fill in your companies, I can give you the formula.
Yeah, that would be actually a great idea. Is anybody here looking to hire?
But here's what I can do. If you're thinking, I need someone to go land clients, get deals, make it happen, and they don't show ODNA, it isn't going to happen. I can promise you that. It doesn't really matter what their resume says or what their past job performance was, because the interesting thing we found about entrepreneurial DNA is we morph. So this is not like a personality thing where if you're a controlling person, you're always a controlling person. People will literally morph out of opportunist DNA into specialist DNA like that. And that does not show up on resumes. That doesn't show up in interviews, because this is genuinely how this person thinks. And so again, when you're recruiting for rainmakers, if your business plan to your investor says we're going to bring in 100 of these clients and 1,000 of those, you better make sure you've got some people with opportunist DNA doing that work.
So George can still keep his job?
Yeah, George. So when we assessed the MX team, and I saw George in the O quadrant, and he's leading the sales efforts, like perfect. He's wired for it. He's energized by it. Opening deals and closing deals is what he loves. It's who he is, and putting him anywhere else in the company would be a drain to him.